Speaker, I'm delighted to rise in support of my colleague and friend, the very hard-working MP for Invercargill electorate that includes Stewart Island, in support of this bill. And I also, in fact, Ms Cartney stole my thunder a little bit by her description of the original name of Stewart Island, which translated means the anchor stone of Maui's canoe, and it's a lovely metaphor for the three islands in New Zealand, with Te Waipounamu, the South Island, being the canoe, the North Island being the fish that Maui pulled in, and Stewart Island being the anchor. But at the outset, I have to confess that I've never, despite living most of my life just 200 kilometres north of Stewart Island, I must confess I've never actually been over to it. I've viewed its magnificence from Bluff Hill and from some of the beaches around Invercargill, but I'm embarrassed to say I haven't actually made the journey yet. I say yet, and I promise to remedy that. Perhaps the member for Invercargill could consider leading a fact-finding delegation over to the island, where such a visit might include sampling some of the many activities the island has to offer, purely for parliamentary purposes, mind you. I'm sure it wouldn't be fun at all. But I certainly wouldn't have any qualms about paying $5 extra for that privilege. And I note Mr Parker's caveat around the lack of a regulatory impact statement and the care, I guess, around the potential creep of levies. And I acknowledge those concerns. They're concerns I don't actually share. I have no problem with the application of a small levy, and more importantly, I don't think neither do the tourists, domestic or international, with paying a small amount to visit these very special places in our country. But I do accept that Mr Parker has a point around the issue of perhaps having a more coherent and consistent framework within which to apply these sorts of levies. He did talk a little bit about whether or not this is appropriate, that sort of infrastructure development that rapid rises in tourism have. And for me, the wonder of it all is that the South is not that the South has enjoyed such a huge growth in tourism, but it's taken 150 years for the rest of the world to cotton on to what we've always known, and that the south of the South Island is one of the most beautiful parts of the world. So I don't actually share those problems, but I do agree that we might need to take a more holistic look at this from a regulatory perspective. The issue of the tourism revenue was also a really interesting one because, in fact, the Crown enjoys the benefit of the tourism revenue through GST that's paid by international tourists and through the income tax that tourism operators pay on their taxable income. So local authorities don't actually have that benefit so much, and I think that this is a very pragmatic solution to that. So with those words, Mr Speaker, congratulations to Mr Roy, and I commend the bill to the House.